Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s with this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes, 1987 at online booksellers everywhere. I got a chance to take a look at the trailer for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and I'd have to say that director James Wan lost a step with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom because this sequel doesn't look as good as the 2018 Aquaman movie, which blew me away with its great visual effects and its big epic adventure story. Now, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom basically feels more like a movie made by a committee, and it feels more like Warner Brothers executives trying to make a movie fit what they think will appeal to an audience, instead of letting a director be able to tell their own story at their own pace and in their own terms. No, this Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is a film that does not feel like it has any sort of direction that makes it distinct. No, like many MCU movies, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom feels more like another product off a Hollywood assembly line, similar to those 1980s GM cars such as the Chevy Chevette and the Chevrolet Citation, vehicles that were meant to be cheap, reliable transportation. However, those vehicles oftentimes were plagued with problems that made them a nightmare to own and maintain. And it's very hard to maintain interest in the DC Extended Universe with them producing mediocre films like Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and I can see why many test viewers wound up walking out on this film, because everything in this trailer just feels absolutely generic and formulaic, again, like those GM cars from the 80s. There's nothing special here about this story that answers the critical question, why should we care? And if you can't answer that critical question when it was time to put fingers to the keyboard, then the viewer has no reason to care about what's happening in this movie, and they have even less reason to care about what happens in this movie now that they know that James Gunn and Peter Safran are now in charge of DC Studios and are going to be creating a new DC Cinematic Universe. This relic of the DC Extended Universe is not a film that most viewers are going to care to watch, because we now know that this film is no longer a part of the canon of the DC Cinematic Extended Universe anymore. So nobody really cares about this movie at this point. Same thing with Blue Beetle and every movie after, including The Flash. We all know that none of these movies matter anymore, and we see why these movies don't matter anymore based on what was presented in that trailer. What was presented in the trailer for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom just showed me this movie was a lost cause after it was greenlit, because basically this film was greenlit because the success of the previous Aquaman. Unfortunately, Warner Brothers and DC didn't put much planning into creating this film story, and they didn't have much direction for where they wanted to go with the story, which is extremely generic, because we've got, I believe, Orm looking to wage war on the surface world, and Arthur looking to be the hero to all of the surface world. Not much of a story, because the story was already told in the previous Aquaman movie, and the previous Aquaman movie already showed Arthur's journey into being a hero. So there's not much here as related to really further developing his story, and there's not much here as related to developing much, and the whole thing makes no sense, because there's a scene with King Shark that makes no sense. You've got King Shark saying he's faster in the water and is placed as a serious character, but in the Suicide Squad he's presented as a bumbling, stumbling clown. Again, not really consistent characterization. You give me a clip of King Shark, but then you don't really show me Aquaman being strong at all. It just really isn't a very good film all around. And then you have the Amber Heard situation, which makes this movie a bigger turd of a movie. Because with Amber Heard, her role has been cut down, and that possibly has affected James Wan's overall vision for this film. So this film is not looking as solid as the original Aquaman, which was one of the most fantastic movies because it had an epic adventure feel. And because Aquaman, the first Aquaman, had that epic adventure feel, you could get into that movie and get excited about it because it felt like Indiana Jones in some parts. It felt big with its big aquatic sequences. I mean, everything in this film felt, the original Aquaman felt like a grand epic film, but this sequel just feels flat and uninspired, especially when you compare it to the visual effects of James Cameron's Avatar 2. Now, James Cameron's Avatar 2 just redefined underwater sequences, and that's just 5 years after Aquaman redefined them the first time, because we never got underwater sequences like we did in the first Aquaman, but technology has evolved and James Cameron took things to another level. So everything in this film feels extremely dated as related to its visuals. And again, that's another hard selling point for Warner Brothers, which is looking to try to get out from under a movie that they have delayed multiple times. And what's really hurt them long term is, again, delaying this film multiple times. Warner Brothers delayed this film and undermined its success, because had this film come out in 2021 or 2022, it possibly would have done very well at the box office. But unfortunately, due to the Amber Heard scandals, the COVID pandemic, and Warner Brothers' complete mismanagement, this movie is coming out on Christmas Day in 2023, and there possibly won't be many people to see this movie because there are much better films, and the fact that this film is no longer canon gives people less of a reason to care about Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom. So this was a lost opportunity for Warner Brothers, as I see it, as related to this trailer. So Warner Brothers basically wound up losing at the end, because they went from creating a grand epic movie that redefined Arthur Curry to creating a movie that made him just as irrelevant because of bad management. Because when I look at this Aquaman movie, it just shows me how all wet these Warner Brothers executives are, and how they are their own worst enemy. They have basically sabotaged all of these movies, like Shazam! Fury of the Gods, Blue Beetle, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. They sabotaged all these movies' success with one announcement, and now these movies that possibly could have gone on to become blockbusters are just going to bust the block at Warner Brothers. And this is all, again, due to the incompetent mismanagement over at Warner Brothers, where the leadership isn't really the problem. There really is the problem, because the Warner Brothers leadership just led this company into a rut. Because again, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, this would have been a great movie in 2020 or 2022, but in 2023, it's a forgotten movie that is irrelevant at this point, because with a new DC universe, nobody really needs to care about the Lost Kingdom, and this was, again, a lost opportunity for Warner Brothers to make a super $1 billion. And again, the superhero movie genre, as I see it, when I'm looking at these newer films like Blue Beetle, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, and this Aquaman trailer, is running out of gas. And I don't think that the superhero movie genre can go on much longer, because the films just feel like, again, they come off an assembly line. They feel like they just basically repeat themselves with the same stories over and over again. And again, like a Chevrolet Citation and a Chevy Chevette, what we're starting to see are signs of rust and signs of issues as related to the overall quality of superhero movies, and the entire genre has become tired at this point. And this is what's affecting these movies. I mean, when I look at Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, I don't see a reason to care to go spend $15 to go see this movie. This is another one I can pass on at the theaters and wait for HBO Max to drop it, because at this point, these superhero movies, again, there's so many of them at this point, they're nothing special. There's no reason to care for them. And if there's no reason to care, there's no reason to want to watch them, because these superhero movies, again, they just keep doing the same things over and over again. So when I look at Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom again, I see a lost opportunity for Warner Brothers, and I see a movie that is just easily forgettable for every comic fan out there. Now, if you want to pick up my first full comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, you can get a paperback copy on Lulu right now by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to pick up my first comic, E-Steam, No Good Deed, you can find that comic on Kindle for 99 cents. And if you want to pick up some of my action-packed fantasy fiction like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and my other novels like the Spinsterella trilogy, The Thetas, and Eternal Night, you can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online bookstores like Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me do more videos about comics, superheroes, science fiction, and fantasy, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes, Godbreaker in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere.